Ever feel like some companies just have that it factor? Like they figured out how to go from like good to unstoppable.
Yeah, totally.
Well, you're in the right place because today we're going deep, deep, deep into good to great.
Ooh, good to great.
Jim Collins' book that doesn't just say be great, it breaks down the how. We've got excerpts, notes, even some like financial data to see what makes these companies tick.
What's really interesting is that this whole research project actually started with like a challenge. It was like someone basically told Jim Collins, hey, in your last book, Built to Last, you only looked at companies that were like born amazing.
Right.
But what about everyone else? Can a good company, even if they're not a superstar right now, can they actually become great?
So not just assuming that the best always stay the best, but like figuring out if greatness is something you can actually learn.
Exactly.
Like can I don't know, a decent basketball team, can they become championship material?
Yeah. And Collins didn't just like sit around and think about it. He spent 5 years, right, studying companies that actually did it. Not just picking out the ones that already looked good, but using like real data,
Okay.
looking at stock performance, stuff that blew the market away, not just for a little bit, but consistently.
So we're talking like results you can actually measure, not just someone's opinion on, what's cool this year,
Right.
which is huge. I mean,
Yeah.
if they figured it out, there's something here for like everyone, right?
Right.
Anyone who wants to reach that next level.
And one of the first things they found was how many of these like common business assumptions were just flat out wrong.
Okay, you can't just drop that and not tell me. Like, what did they find that didn't matter?
Okay, the biggest one, the biggest myth they busted, the superstar CEO. So get this, 10 out of 11 CEOs in the good to great companies, they came from inside the company. Not some hotshot they brought in from outside. Building a great company, it seems like it was less about having a big personality and more about, consistent, almost quiet leadership.
So it's not about finding like your industry's Steve Jobs.
Not at all, no. And here's another thing they found, and this one's a real head scratcher. Huge executive pay packages.
Really?
No connection to success, like at all. It really challenges that whole idea that you need to throw tons of money, big bonuses at your executives to make them perform.
So if it's not about having a flashy leader and it's not about showering them with money, what is it then? What actually separates the good from the truly great companies?
This is where they introduce this idea of level 5 leadership. And it's kind of fascinating because it's not really about charisma. It's more like this weird mix of, personal humility, but also intense professional will.
Wait, hold on. Humility and will. Those seem like complete opposites. How does that even work in a leader?
Yeah. That's the thing. These leaders, they weren't like, rock stars. They were more like, imagine like a really dedicated farmer, quietly, just relentlessly working the land until it produces this amazing harvest. They're driven, but they're not doing it for the attention or the fame.
Okay. I think I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
But can you give me an example? Like you got a case study for this, right? What about this Darwin Smith guy and Kimberly Clark?
Darwin Smith, he's like the level 5 poster child, right? He's facing cancer, and he makes this huge decision to sell off Kimberly Clark's like legacy paper mills.
Wow.
And go all in on the consumer market. So he's betting big on brands like, Huggies, Kleenex, stuff they didn't have a ton of experience with at the time.
That's a gutsy move. That'd be like, I don't know, like a basketball team just ditching their whole playbook, even if it got them to the playoffs,
Yeah.
and deciding to master a completely new style, high risk, high reward.
Exactly. And it shows the difference between level 5 and what Collins calls geniuses with 1,000 helpers. Think like Lee Iacocca with Chrysler. Brilliant turnaround.
Right. But once he left, things kind of fell apart,
So it's like a personality-driven leader might create a quick boost, but they don't build something that lasts.
That's it, exactly. Now compare that to a guy like Alan Wurtzel at Circuit City. Quiet, thoughtful, always asking questions. And he built a company that thrived long after he was gone.
And he actually credited luck as a big factor in his success, which I thought was really interesting. It's almost like these level 5 leaders are so focused on the work, they don't even realize how good they are.
That's true. It's like
they recognize that being in the right place at the right time matters, but they still maximize that opportunity. Exactly. It's that humility that lets them build up these really strong teams. They give credit where it's due, and they create a culture where everyone feels valued. And that leads us to the next big principle. confronting the brutal facts.
Yeah.
And this doesn't mean like being negative all the time, you know. It's more about having the guts to really look at what's going on even when it's tough, and then using that reality to make decisions. Not just, oh, there's a problem, but okay, how does this problem actually help us figure out our next move?
Give me an example, like a real-world situation where this played out.
Okay, picture this. It's the 1970s, okay? You've got these two like classic grocery store chains, Kroger and A&P.
Okay.
They're both, you know, facing this new landscape. New chains are popping up, suburbs are booming, and shoppers, they want different things now.
Right, right.
But their reactions to all of this, totally different.
Okay, now I'm picturing those, like, old school stores, the linoleum floors, the cashiers like your best friend because you're bagging everything yourself.
Exactly, exactly. So A&P, they'd been on top for so long, but they just couldn't accept that their way, it wasn't working anymore, you know. They fought change every step of the way. I mean, there's even this quote from their CEO at the time, and he basically said, like, we're not changing, we're A&P.
Ouch. Talk about sticking your head in the sand. What happened?
Well, to put it bluntly, they basically went extinct, like dwindled down to almost nothing. Kroger, on the other hand, they took a good hard look at themselves. They were like, okay, the world is changing. What do we need to do? And they studied the competition. They tried new store formats. They made big changes.
So no sitting around wishing for, the good old days.
Yeah.
They actually adapted.
Yes. They decided they were going to become the best supermarket chain, period. And then they built everything around that. They closed down stores that weren't working. They invested in, like, new technology, stuff like those barcode scanners that were just starting to come out. And they even thought about how to make the whole shopping experience, more enjoyable than the old A&P way.
So it's like confronting the brutal facts. It's not just admitting there's a problem. It's about what you do with that information.
Yeah.
It's making the hard choices, changing, actually building something better.
You got it. And it's not like a one-time thing either. It's got to be part of your culture. Everyone from the top down has to feel like they can speak up, point out problems, be part of the solution. Collins calls these red flag mechanisms.
Red flag mechanisms. Okay, now I'm picturing someone in a meeting, like literally waving a red flag saying, stop, we have a problem.
Well, you're not far off. One company that Collins studied, they had this system called short pay. So, like, customers could actually pay less than what their invoice said if they weren't happy with the service.
Wow. You're basically inviting criticism.
Exactly. It forces the company to face the reality of, like, what their customers are actually experiencing. No BS. And let me tell you, it's a really powerful incentive to improve.
That takes guts. You'd be like a teacher letting students grade their own tests. You'd have to be really, really sure of your value. But I can see how powerful that could be.
And that confidence, knowing what you're good at and what you're aiming for, that leads us to what Collins calls the hedgehog concept.
Okay, let me guess. It's not about being prickly and unapproachable, right?
You got it. The hedgehog concept is really about simplicity, being laser focused. It's about knowing what your company can be the absolute best at, like in the entire world. It's stripping away all the extras, all the distractions, and just getting to the core of what really matters.
Like having those blinders on, like a racehorse, so you can just focus on what's ahead.
Yes, exactly. Collins talks about like a fox, right? Clever, but trying to do a million things at once. And then you've got the hedgehog, who knows how to do one thing really, really well.
Right.
The companies that went from good to great, they were the hedgehogs. They weren't chasing every new trend. They knew what they were good at, and they just went for it relentlessly.
Okay, but how does this hedgehog idea work in the real world? Give me an example.
Look at Walgreens. They didn't try to become like a Walmart, you know? They didn't try to be a pharmacy giant or a healthcare provider or anything like that.
Right.
Nope. They said, we're going to be the best, most convenient drugstore, and their main focus, profit per customer visit.
Profit per customer visit. That's really specific.
Right. They realized that success wasn't about just having a ton of stores. It was about making each one of those stores as profitable as possible. So everything, the way the store was laid out, what products they put on the shelves, how they treated customers, even how fast people could get in and out, it was all geared towards improving that one number.
So not some big fancy vision statement, but one simple thing. And they got really, really good at it. It's like, I don't know, if a basketball team just decided, like, we're going to be the best free throw shooters in the league, and then just practice relentlessly day after day until they were automatic.
Yes, exactly. But it's also more than just like numbers and metrics, The companies that really stood out, they were passionate about their work.
Right.
It wasn't just a job. They believed in what they were doing, whether it was like Nucor and their innovative steel production, or even Philip Morris with cigarettes. There was this fire in their belly.
That makes sense, right? Passion, it fuels that drive for excellence.
Yeah.
But it can't just be about enthusiasm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I know people who are really passionate about playing the lottery,
Yep.
and it doesn't exactly make them financial geniuses.
No, not at all. Passion has to be balanced with discipline, with focus, with that grounded understanding of reality we were talking about. And that's where the hedgehog concept comes in. It's where your passion, what you can be the absolute best at, and what actually drives your profit all come together.
Like a three-legged stool,
Yeah.
Each part has to be strong for the whole thing to work.
Exactly.
But even then, going from good to great, I mean, that takes time, right? It's not
Yeah.
an overnight thing.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us to this idea of the flywheel effect.
Okay, the flywheel effect. So am I picturing like this giant heavy wheel that takes like a ton of effort to get moving?
That's a perfect analogy. These companies, these good to great companies, they didn't just become successful overnight. It really was like pushing that giant flywheel. Each little push, each turn builds on the last one. It's slow at first, for sure, but eventually you build up so much momentum, you're basically unstoppable.
So there's no magic solution, no one thing that suddenly changes everything.
No, not at all. They weren't relying on like these huge product launches or marketing blitzes or sudden restructures. It was just about doing the right things consistently, day after day, year after year, until all of those small wins added up to something huge.
It's like they're playing the long game in a way that most companies they don't, right?
Exactly. And it's that discipline, those small, consistent actions, all guided by that hedgehog concept that really make the difference. Imagine like Dave Scott.
Okay.
The Ironman triathlete.
Yeah.
This guy, he was so disciplined that, like, he'd actually rinse his cottage cheese
He'd rinse his cottage cheese.
to get rid of, like, a few extra ounces of water weight.
Okay, that's next level. I got to respect it, though. But it makes the point, right? It's those tiny, consistent actions done really, really well that add up over time.
Exactly. And the companies that didn't make that leap, they often fell into what Collins calls the doom loop.
The doom loop. Sounds ominous.
It is. It's like they're chasing quick fixes, jumping on every new trend, restructuring everything without really understanding their hedgehog concept.
So they're all over the place, basically.
Yeah, just spinning their wheel. It's like a basketball team that's constantly changing players and their strategy, their coach every 5 minutes.
Right, they're never going to build any momentum that way.
Exactly.
The discipline, consistency, all guided by that clear hedgehog concept, that's how you get out of the doom loop and build something that actually lasts.
You got it. And that leads to like this final question that Collins tackles in the book. From good to great, dot to arrow, built to last. He's connecting this book back to his earlier work on companies that like managed to stay on top for like generations.
So it's not just about being great for a little while. It's about building something with real staying power.
Right. And what they found was that the companies that truly lasted, they had this really strong core ideology, like values, a purpose that went beyond just making money.
Okay.
Think about like HP or Merck. They weren't just driven by profits. They really believed in what they were doing and how it could make a difference.
So it's like their mission, their values, it's like a North Star, right?
Yeah.
It's guiding their decisions even when things get tough.
Exactly. It helps them weather the storms. It helps them attract the right people. It creates this culture of meaning that lasts longer than any one leader or product or even like a CEO.
That's a powerful idea.
Right.
Right? It's not just about building a company. It's about creating something with like a real legacy.
And that's really what good to great is all about. It's not like a recipe. It's more like a challenge, To really look at what you're doing, question your assumptions, face those brutal facts head on, and then figure out how to combine that humility, that willpower, and that disciplined action. That's the key.
So as you're thinking about your own work, your own goals, ask yourself, what's your hedgehog concept?
Yeah.
What could you be the absolute best in the world at? What really gets you fired up? What are you truly passionate about? And how does that connect to what drives you forward?
It's all connected.
Once you figure out those things, that's when you can start pushing on your own flywheel, one turn at a time, building that unstoppable momentum towards your own version of greatness.
I love it.
And who knows, maybe someday we'll be here, diving deep into your story.